Somebody's there. Nancy's there. Great.
Hey, Nancy.
I don't know if she can
Not
hear you yet, but we're launching, and we're watching the YouTube chat too, and so if you can help us with that, Gray, that would be terrific.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Here's Miles. I don't know why it's not put Nancy in yet. Okay. I think we have my friend Cindy coming on. Hello, Thomas. How are you? Nice to see you. It's been a little bit of, it's been a while since we've seen you.
Couple hours.
Yeah. And, there's Nancy. We finally got her into the webinar, and we'll see. Everybody, I think everybody is glued to the television set for any news whatsoever about what's going on. So Thomas, tell us what's going on in Alabama. What are you folks thinking down there these days? Oh, we have to unmute you just a moment. Okay, you're unmuted. There you go. You're on. Still can't hear you though. That is something on your end because you are not muted on my end. Can't hear you. There, I saw you unmute yourself. Can you say something? Thomas? No, nothing. Not hearing you. Okay. Hi, Nancy. Hello. I'd like to introduce all of you to my friend Cindy, who is in the center of my screen if you hit the gallery view right now. Cindy is a registered nurse who works in, I guess, mental health. Are you still doing mental health?
Yes. Yeah, work in psychiatry at Johns Hopkins.
Wow. I'd love to, we'll all introduce ourselves for a minute, but in a minute when we get a few more people on, but I'd really love to hear from you, Cindy, about how you're doing. I understand you're a presumed positive on the coronavirus, and that is concerning. So tell us what you're doing and what you're hearing from your colleagues at Johns Hopkins.
Well, I'm going to try to do this without coughing too much. And so, excuse me. Well, basically, I'm at home now. I actually started, personally, I started an herbal protocol about 2 weeks prior to beginning to have symptoms, and I'm still continuing it. So it's about a month today that I've been on a herbal protocol, and it's a 3-stage protocol, and many of the types of herbs that I'm taking are very commonly used for chronic diseases like Lyme, like lupus, like a lot of different things to help keep the body's inflammation down. And one piece of it really impacts the pathogenesis of the viral attachment to the ACE2 epithelial cells. So I began to have a fairly sudden onset of symptoms. Excuse me, I have to get something out of my pocket. I'm sitting on it and it hurts. I began to have a sudden onset of symptoms last Wednesday. I had had a little bit of a distant cough, but not much to really think about. Maybe 2-3 times a day I'd cough. But two Wednesdays, it'll be 2 Wednesdays in 48 hours. So about 12 days ago, when I was at work, I began to have, a lot of tightness in my chest and shortness of breath. And I was, visually people could see and hear me coughing, and it was quite a bit more. So it was determined that, I called our occupational health and went down that whole avenue. And they had suggested, they really encouraged me to go to the ER. So at that point in time, the ERs, weren't the place they are today. They were still utilizing all gowns, masks, PAPRs, and all that. But today an ER is, probably not the best place to go unless you're really, really unable to, make it anywhere else. But best thing is to stay home if you can.
Yeah.
And so I was in there, and the experience was a little surreal. For a little while, and working in mental health, I can tolerate a lot, and I can put a lot of things in perspective. And but at some point, it just dawned on me that I was sitting in there, and I'm awaiting my test results. I mean, so they had me tested within less than 2 hours of getting into the ER. And it was just very surreal to see that. And of course, it's everything we've seen on TV, but to actually be in a bed and awaiting, and having difficulty breathing and other symptoms. And so so I was discharged. I've been at home since then, and I've had a variety of symptoms, and it seems that they take turns as to what's more predominant. Like some days the chest heaviness is far more predominant. I have a lot of other symptoms, and I don't know, here's the place to really go over them all. If somebody has questions.
Yeah, please do, because
Okay.
yeah, because what we're trying to do here, we all know that this is going to be a huge mental health issue across the world. And Tim Holmes and I have started to do this global check-in,
Okay.
which we'll be doing that again tomorrow at 11 in the morning. But the idea is to help people hear stories of others and hear straight from the horse's mouth from people that are experiencing what's going on. And so for example, the other day we had an Indian colleague on, and she's saying they have 35 million people walking across India right now because of all the day laborers who don't have work anymore, so they don't have any income. And it's really frightening what's happening. So I don't want to interrupt your story. I want you to go ahead though, and
Okay.
just give us a sense of what it's like to have the virus, any experiences you're having in the hospital that you can talk about, and when do you think you actually will clear enough to excuse me, I think that's allergy, by the way, but when do you think you can actually go back? Now, as I understand it, you're presumed positive but not definitely tested positive, or what?
Well, my test, again, I was tested in less than 2 hours after I got to the ER, and my symptoms, the chest heaviness and shortness of breath, came on so suddenly. So I was tested very fast.
Mhm.
And when I was discharged, the attending physician said that my results won't be until tomorrow. I ended up finding out because I received them electronically overnight. But she said their chances are they'll probably be negative because you came in so fast. If
Mhm.
your symptoms go away in a day or two, then then, and they come back negative, then you could almost be assured they're negative. But if you continue to have symptoms, then you're presumed positive and you are positive.
Mhm.
And so that's the category that I fit in
I see.
because
So
my
you
symptoms,
you came in before your coronavirus actually showed up in your system.
yes, yeah, the amount of inoculation wasn't great enough to show up at that time.
I see.
And so I've talked to my doctor since then and about whether I should be retested. And he said, well, at this point, it's irrelevant until you get better. Once you're better, then they're going to do the test for the antibodies.
Hmm.
But my symptoms from the time I went home 12 days ago, it really worsened in about 2 days after that. I was able to get rest on that Thursday, but then shortness of breath, it intensified. And the symptoms, I had probably a handful or so of varying symptoms, from headache, shortness of breath, chest heaviness. I feel sometimes, and it's not every day, but almost like pains, like I'm having a chest pain, like what somebody might think of either indigestion or maybe a TIA, some kind of cardiac event. And I reduced it down knowing that it's not indigestion, because I didn't have any other symptoms. I don't have a history of that. But the types of symptoms, one day I would have a lot of coughing and shortness of breath. Diarrhea has been consistent throughout. I've had diarrhea pretty significantly every day.
Wow.
And sometimes it only gives me a 20-30 second warning. So I'm running. A lot of fatigue, just a lot of fatigue. But, when you asked about the mental health piece of it, I began to notice that I was having some type of anxiety coming from it. And I felt as though, and I have a pretty strong vasovagal response. Like if I get frightened, I feel it in my body. I get like a wave. And your body can sometimes manifest that through your vasovagal center. And so I noticed I went outside to just go outside. It was like my third or fourth day home. And I just thought, let me just get outside. I live in a house, so I can go out front and I can go out back. And I got to the first step and I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff and I was about ready to fall over. And that fear of like, whoa, I felt this ripple through my body, and it just reminded me, and I just immediately pulled myself back. It's like I almost knew I was going to fall over a precipice into a major anxiety attack. And I felt it in such a way that if you've ever felt a shiver in your body, that's how it impacted me. And that happened a couple times more. And when I was talking to my doctor, he said that that's definitely been a manifestation. I mean, there's a lot of people are having anxiety when they've never have, but he hadn't quite heard the description I've given. And he thought that was useful because he's had other patients that have tried to describe their anxiety. And I just felt in that moment that if I didn't pull myself back off that precipice, I don't know where that anxiety would have taken me. I just felt like I was going to die. And it's funny because I kind of, not really switching gears, but just my perspective. That's happened a couple more times, but yesterday I actually felt it again, and it wasn't really anxiety. It was I had some steps removed from my house. And I'm going to be putting a deck with 4 steps down. So when you leave my kitchen door, there's no steps there now.
I see.
And I somehow, I don't know why, but something made me want to go out and say something to my neighbor And these steps were taken out months ago. And I know that there's no steps there. And it's a 4-foot drop. And I just walked right out like
Oh boy.
like there were steps. And that whole experience that I had before, a feeling like I was standing on the precipice of a cliff or something, I actually like floated through the air, and it felt like everything was in slow mo. It was just so strange, but I'm having just a lot of, well, I landed on one foot. I didn't fall. And surprisingly, I landed on my bad leg, but it was kind of straight and stiff. And I feel okay today, but just a lot of weird things. Sometimes I feel hot and cold, and I feel like I'm instantly getting really sick. Last night, my SATs, now I'm talking good now and I'm not coughing, I'm on a stride. But last night my oxygen levels were going down to 93, 92. Today they're a little better at 95, 96. So it's varying, and it's scary because, what we're hearing is that a lot of times the symptoms will come on, and they'll come on very fast.
Mhm.
And it's almost like a train's taking off from the station, and the horse is out of the barn, and there it goes. So my doctor feels that, and this is a naturopath doctor, he feels that the herbals that I'm taking are definitely creating somewhat of a barrier for this virus to take hold like it would normally want to. So
Are you taking traditional medicines too?
no.
No, only the herbals. So what are the herbals you're taking?
Well, I have a list, and I could actually, they're printed out. I could show them to you. I can run and get them real quick if you'd like. And I also could later send you the paper. There's a 19-page paper by an herbologist. He's been doing this for 30 years. And I took that 19-page paper and I extrapolated all the pertinent information and came down to a 2-page paper. But then I made these little flashcards that have my herbals, and I take them 3 times a day, and I just follow the same routine. So.
Okay, could you, why don't you just send those to me by email?
Okay.
And I'll introduce those in tomorrow's global check-in.
Okay. But as far as at work, prior to this, yeah, supplies are extremely limited. We've had, now being I work in mental health, the particular type of patients we have are pregnant women in treatment. And so we've had some supplies, come up missing right before we closed down parts of our clinic. And so, but I'm in the chain of information that's coming through every day by the hospital executives and directors of infection control and Homeland Security and all that. And so it's all good information that I'm seeing. So
good information, but is it good news? That's the question.
well, it's good information. It's helpful. Do we have the amount of supplies? I think what we hear is one thing, and I think what we see is another. But I personally, I do believe that, well, we all know it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I think it's not going to be a quick road.
No,
I think
it's not.
It's not. And so this is a pathogen that's going to be around for a good while. And at some point, we all have to leave our houses for something. And, we're going to be exposed. I think the biggest thing, and you'd mentioned that in our call, I think earlier, is when we were chatting, is that this whole idea of the curve, flattening the curve, all that really does is it really impacts access to healthcare. That's the main thing, is that flattening the curve is going to impact access to healthcare, and so that everybody's not, being taken in at the same time.
Right.
If and when somebody's exposed and succumbs to this, when we're at the bottom of this so-called curve, the chances of getting more comprehensive health care is going to be greater. So that's still the scary part, because the pathogen has manifested itself in so many odd, random ways, and shown its lethality in young athletes
Yes.
with very strong bodies. So.
Right. So Thomas is unable to communicate by his mic, but he's sent a couple of comments for us, and one of them relates to you, Cindy. So I want to ask you about that. He says there's a huge problem here in Alabama with not enough hospitals in rural, impoverished areas. Here in Birmingham, it's a bit different. Doesn't the lack of human contact create in itself a problem?
The
lack of human contact. And by the way, there's a bit of a ringer on this call because Joss Sangalang is a psychiatrist, by the way, and a longtime friend of mine. So maybe she can also talk to that. But why don't you go ahead and finish up, Cindy?
I see. Okay. So yes, from the perspective, the lack of human contact, we're hearing all these songs by celebrities about, no human. I heard one celebrity earlier speaking about no human contact. On one hand, that will inhibit transmission, at least at the point where there is no contact. But the lack of human contact from the perspective of mental health is tremendous. It is the one piece that when somebody is troubled, when somebody is dealing with thoughts and emotions and inclinations, a lot of times getting out in the sunshine can help, but human contact, whether that, having that face-to-face human touch, it's hard to replace that. I mean, and you see that in animals. You see that. I mean, I don't even want to refer to babies, but we see the lack of human contact with babies in orphanages. You see that with animals.
Sure.
And
so,
that's.
But how's the balance of your colleagues who maybe have more human contact than they want right now?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's hard. I haven't had a lot of opportunity in the last 2 weeks to have much contact. In between my getting on, I'm really doing a lot of resting in between. And it seems that when I wake up, everybody else is sleeping. So I'm having a little bit of insomnia from this. And, but just from the type of clientele and patients that we have in our clinic setting, we've had patients that, even though we're kind of on I don't want to say a lockdown, but we have explained and taught and encouraged and advised them on all manners of behaviors that are good to have and behaviors that they really want to inhibit from having. And, we're having patients that, even though they're staying, they kind of live on our unit, because that's part of the treatment. And, but in the afternoon, they'll have their boyfriend or their sister or somebody come and visit them, and they're sitting out in the car for a couple hours, and it's difficult. Human behavior is hard to modify. It really is. We all come from such a different perspective of what our priorities and what we feel that we benefit from and what we value, that it makes it very difficult. I think that we're in a situation, a time right now that many of our values and what we hold as important to our sense of belief of who we are, how we fit into a family structure, how we fit into society. A lot of it's based on human behavior, not just what we say. And so it's very difficult. But I
Yeah.
have to get my cord because my phone is on low battery. So I'm
Yep.
gonna get
Okay.
become quiet for a minute and run and get my battery cord.
Right. So, Joss, do you want to speak to these mental health issues as long as we're on a roll on that?
Sure. I agree with Cindy. Human contact is very important. It's part of the fabric of who we are as human beings. We're a pack animal in general. Now, granted, we have a whole big spectrum. Some people like their solitude. I think, Thomas, you mentioned, you tend to be on the person who values your solitude. And yes, I do too. But at the same side of the coin, or opposite side of the coin, I am an extrovert too. And it's all about balance. And we all have our different level of balance. But also, I'd like to mention that what we're going through, I'd like to put it in perspective. I believe, and I guess I want to hope that all this will be a thing of the past. We're going through a phase right now, and we just have to stick together and endure it and go through it. Go through, like, who was it? Churchill would say, if you're going through hell, well, go through it. And so that's what we're going through. But going through this, we are experiencing a contrast of what we were before, with touchy-feely, and we had the liberty of that behavior. But now we're forced, because we have to protect ourselves as well as protect our loved ones, by staying socially isolated. But this gives us an opportunity to really not only see, but really feel that contrast. But it's like Cindy said, it heightens what's important in our life. We start to value human contact, compassion, caring, and really value that. So when we get out of this, I hope that we'll see a lot of huggies and a lot more social contact, and really show and express our appreciation for our loved ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely have to do that. Let's see. Thomas made a couple of other points here. Let's see if we can. Jerome, are you able to admit Nicole, because I don't seem to be
Yeah, I
able to.
can. I just want to know if you knew her.
Yeah, that's the love doctor.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'll get her. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, Thomas said a couple of things here. He says, I find myself incredibly inspired to write and try to make some sense of the world around me. If we will think back, there is a new reality is a phrase that was used post 9/11. I have seen several new realities in my 66 and a half years. And then he asks, are we herd animals or pack animals? And that's certainly a good question. Does anybody have any thoughts about that?
I'll take a crack at it. A troop, most of the primates, or most of the major primates, the bigger primates, they form, some of the most complex social systems you can imagine. And but I would consider us. It's the pack idea is not as truthful, because our social hierarchies are so much more complex than a pack animal would be, and the complexity that the simplicity of a pack animal is a whole lot more dominance oriented, and whereas the herd the herd is going to be a little bit. So that there's a lot of debate, just like there would be a lot of debate. Are we a tournament species, or are we a pair bonded species? And I think Joss was talking about earlier. We're different people come from different perspectives, and it's almost like the different types of behavioral patterns. And you would have to lump in different cultural patterns, right? And how cultures have interacted to develop those social hierarchies throughout time. So like most things in biology, Skip, like we've talked about, the answer to that is yes. We are. We're both.
We're both.
We'll do both.
Okay. And thank you to Nicole for managing to join us from north of Sydney. Good evening.
Yeah, hey.
Good morning.
I wish I
Nicole.
could get past you.
So Thomas says, what if the internet breaks? I hate to bring this up, but it could happen. And that's, social civilization can break down. There's no doubt about that.
I'll just say that the internet is a military invention, and it's specifically designed not to go down, to be very robust and resilient. So
Right.
hopefully that's the case.
Well, it's very robust and resilient for the military, but that doesn't stop our powers that be from shutting us down. And so that is a concern.
Yeah, the design of the internet, the way it's decentralized with different servers, and they've got all sorts of fail safes in place. Now, Zoom that we're on now had a problem, is they went from like 20 million to almost 200 million users because of this, and
Right.
it taxed their servers, and they accidentally sent some to their China servers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
China, they have to release their codes, so that they weren't supposed to do that. So they apologized, and by requiring us to do a password was one of the things they just put in, was to help us and keep us
Right.
from the trolls. So
Yeah, I guess we have to do that now. Unfortunately, I hope that that we could just let everybody join and talk in our global check-in, but that doesn't seem to be true. And so we've had a couple of bad experiences, and so we're being forced to build up our webinar community slowly, and so we've had to put in some security over the last weekend, and now we have it, at least as much as I can think of for the moment. And this means that for those of you who are watching, I see a few of you on the YouTube channel chat who are members of our group one way or another, and I'd urge you to join us if you can. And meanwhile, if you can't, we welcome you on the YouTube chat. And so anyway, let's go on, and let's see who's next. Well, Nicole, tell us about your life. It looks very idyllic compared to
I'm outside. yeah. This is oh wow. Well, I'm just really trusting in life at the moment and my own place in it, and really going within. And I connected with a guy yesterday that I've been following on Academy. It's an online academic website where people write in and stuff, and they publish essays and things like that. His name's John C. Woodcock. And I just have spent all morning immersed in his conversations that he's having with this lady in Israel. But it was done at the end of 2019. But it's almost like they're talking about the consciousness of people and what's happening without knowing what's happening. And it's kind of strange. Anyway, well, that's my reading of it anyway. Like, and I guess on the one hand, what I'm doing is I'm going really deep into my own world, and I don't really know what's happening out there. Like, I had a conversation yesterday with some people at the general store. We were just all standing kind of separate, and it's like people are just, life is going on as normal. But in the background, in my mind, is like this morning, I had this little thought bubble that went, oh God, I'm just going to go out there and find out about some other horrible thing that's happening in the world. And do I really want to?
Yeah.
You know, like
How about a spread in Sydney? Is it spreading very much yet, or is it under control at the moment?
I've got this app that gives you updates of all the numbers and the stats and all that, and I keep checking it because there was a cruise ship that came into Sydney Harbour that's had a lot of people on it that had the virus and are carrying the virus, and they let some of them off. I think some of them are still on this boat, and it's moored out off Sydney somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good thing. Anyway, I don't know. I think I've got a friend who's a nurse, and I tried to contact her yesterday, but she said she couldn't talk. It seems to be a little bit stable at the moment. You know, it doesn't seem to be, everybody's kind of just waiting, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be growing too fast. So that's as far as I know at the moment, but it might have changed overnight. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it did change overnight in Maryland. Our cases tripled since last night. So, Nick, what's going on in Singapore? Are things under control now, or it's actually today that you're losing your freedom? Is that right?
That's right. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yep. It's coming to 9 in the morning, and today is Tuesday. Sorry about my dog. Oh man, maybe someone else can talk first. There's someone at the door, so I'll take up soon. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, we'll call on Jerome if
okay. Yeah. Well, the dog needs attention, and Josh just lost something there. Some people need to mute their.
Yeah, we need to mute. We need to mute you, or you need to mute you.
Yeah.
Josh, if you would.
Somebody's getting my voice through their speaker. I can the echo.
Right.
Who's the culprit here?
Can you mute your mic, Cindy?
Okay, hello. Okay. Is there no? Okay. I still hear that.
Is that coming from Thomas? Thomas, are you?
It's Thomas, I think.
I'm trying to get my voice to work.
Oh,
trying to get the voice to work.
It's working now. Okay.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
Right, but we're also getting feedback. So if you would mute it until Jerome speaks, that would be helpful.
Got it.
Okay.
So go ahead, Jerome.
No feedback. And Nicholas is his dog wanted attention. I've noticed that when people start speaking, their dogs want to talk too. You know, if you've got a dog, and Nancy's birds start chirping when she starts talking. So I've noticed this going on. But anyway, and I live in Western North Carolina, and the state of North Carolina just issued a warning and said if we stop at the end of April, that it's possible that and start reintroducing people in society, we could lose 750,000 people, or 750,000 people could get the virus. And
just in North Carolina.
Yeah, and if we continue past April, say into March, the end of March, then the risk drops to 250,000 people.
The end of May, you mean?
Yeah, end of May. Excuse me. Yeah, end of May. It drops. So this is like it's moving out 2 months here of being sequestered, and our latest thing. We have 50 people in our county that are sick or diagnosed with the disease. And it used to be less than that, but 23 more got infected at one nursing home, not a nursing home, but a senior living center.
Yeah, we have our biggest number of cases in 80 nursing homes in Maryland right now, 80.
And what's some of the people that work there, that, you know, the helpers that come in to work and help the seniors and so forth, they allowed them to come in sick with a temperature, and they think it was spread that way. And a lot of these senior living centers are owned by one big giant corporation. And they've got certain rules and policies, and so this is it's very disturbing.
Yeah,
because they said they were using the sanitary procedures and they were all that stuff, but they weren't. They were allowing their employees to come in sick. But then our positive note, our supermarkets have decided to implement only so many people per square feet. They're putting 8-foot markers on the, you know, standing, and they're making all the aisles one way. You know, so you can maintain that distance as you go down instead of
that's interesting. That's a good
people. So
that's a good innovation, I guess.
Yeah, they're putting little arrows on the floor, so you just follow the arrows. You know? So, but anyway, people are being creative, and then they talked about bandanas and wearing a mask, and I had some old bandanas, and I went on the internet, and I said, well, I don't know. I used to wear bandanas just as a sweatband, because these are like 20 or 25 years old, and I had to wash them first. But then on the internet, they show you how to fold them, and you put
a rubber band,
a hairband, you know, like, you know, women for ponytails and stuff. There's a hairband here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it on each side.
Mm-hmm.
And you put a pipe, what do you call that? A pipe cleaner in here, and it bends. And then you can put it on and go around your nose and put it around your ears. So anyway, if you go to the internet, you can see how to fold these things if you've got the material. So anyway, that's what I've been working on. Because, but I mean, they're recommending that everybody wear the cloth masks now. So, and if you go grocery shopping, it's just better. But then to make sure that you don't touch anything, and take it out and wash it the minute, you know. Put it in the laundry and wash it, and then wash your hands. So we're getting a lot of good recommendations for it.
Yeah.
But and I think people are now starting to take it seriously. So.
Yeah, well, just in order of magnitude, when cities take it seriously, it makes a huge difference, because in 1918, the city of Philadelphia had 16,000 deaths, whereas St. Louis only had 700. And the difference was that Philadelphia held their what became a parade to celebrate the end of World War I on November the 10th, 1918, and St. Louis canceled theirs. And that celebration in Philadelphia ended up killing 16,000 people as opposed to 700 in St. Louis. And that's 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 a big number. As most of you know, my grandfather was fianced to a woman who, together with her 4 sisters, all died on the same weekend from the Spanish flu. And so, you know, we have to be very cognizant of this stuff. It's very, very serious. Nancy, ladies first. I'm sorry I didn't get to you earlier, but tell me, how are you holding up?
Well, I'm doing pretty well, actually. I looked at our statistics here in Reno, and we have some good news in a way, and that is that the increase, the percent of increase is decreasing.
Mhm.
So on the 3rd, we had 45 new cases. And then today we had just 19 new cases.
That's
so
a good sign.
it seems to be working to have flattened the curve for us. But our largest hospital has taken one of their huge parking garages and are making hospital rooms in the parking garage.
Mm-hmm. So the powers that be are definitely expecting a big push at some point.
It would seem so. Now just at the time we started tonight, the governor is giving a message. I'm not sure what it's going to be on,
Mhm.
but he has, I think I said before, he's activated the National Guard.
Uh-huh.
And that way your state gets a whole lot of support from the government, from
Yeah.
the federal government to help. So that's been a good decision of his.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most states have a National Guard medical unit, for example, that has doctors. Now, the downside of that is that during, I guess it was Gulf War One, back in the early 90s, the reserves were activated, and all of my clients, I was serving the medical community, and all my clients went off to war, and all the doctors left,
The governor's also set up something called a Battle-Born Medical Corps. Battle-Born is the slogan for Nevada.
Yeah.
And he's invited behavioral health professionals and healthcare providers to join this. And they're inviting retired people and all kinds of people who have that kind of background to join this particular group to supplement what's going on.
Yeah.
With the
Is
current.
it
Go ahead.
okay? Is it okay for Brendan?
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of my local members. So
I got it.
yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Nancy.
That's okay.
Yeah, for some reason I'm not able to admit him anymore, but thank goodness I created you as a co-host.
Well,
It said a little bit ago, there was a little message that said Gray Yates is now hosting. So I don't know if that did anything.
I don't know, but Gray's here, and
you've got Gray as host.
Oh, did I accidentally make him host?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, could you change that? Or
well, I don't think I can, because I'm just a co-host.
Gray, if you're host, could you make me the host again?
Yeah.
I'll make you the co-host again. Let me see if I can do that now. No, not yet. So the little 3 dots up in the upper right corner of your picture, Gray, that right there, it should give you a drop-down menu. And apparently I pushed the wrong button.
Yeah. That's why that'll solve.
Okay.
Well, let's see.
Oh, I'm still locked out, but anyway.
Yeah. All right. Well, Gray's.
Can't hear you, Gray.
Where do I need to go to change that?
At the top of your little box on the gallery view, on the right side, top right, there's a little blue box with three dots in that. And you click on that and it'll give you a drop down menu. And then if you would create Skip as host again, and then I'll recreate you as a co-host.
Yeah, y'all might want to go ahead and keep talking about something else.
Right. Okay. So Miles is here. Miles, how are you holding up in Alberta? Tell us about that. All right. I don't know if he can hear us. Oh, there he
Okay,
is.
sorry.
Hi, Miles.
Hello. Well, I live in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, and I'm in a neighborhood where, unfortunately, a seniors' home is one of the first places to register having COVID-19 in it. And sadly, I think they're now up to 10 people have died.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the reason was because they figure it's because the staff in some of these old age homes will work in more than one location.
Oh boy.
So somebody was bringing it in, and so I actually am within a few minutes walk of really one of the hot spots in my province of Alberta. But generally, I think the measures are helping the medical staff keep things from getting out of hand in the typical locations. I think they're struggling with where they have a situation like what I just described in the senior center. Of course, it's tough to convince people who work in these areas to sign up, right? And to take these jobs. So my thankfulness to all the healthcare workers and the maintenance staff and grocery store people.
Yeah, boy, they never imagined they'd be on the front lines, and these numbers are pretty sobering because when I was in Vietnam years ago, 50 years ago, the percentage of second lieutenants that got killed was 4%. Okay, 4% of all second lieutenants who went to Vietnam were killed. And we have about that same level in the death rate in this. So all of a sudden, people who are grocery clerks and people who are mopping the floor in grocery stores and that sort of thing are suddenly on the front lines, and they're in this kind of a risk. It's quite sobering.
And another situation is around the world is the supply of the personal protective equipment, which primarily is the gloves. Primarily the masks, the proper masks. And now one of the world's largest producers is the 3M company. And from what I understand, the largest manufacturing plant in North America, anyway, I believe, is in Minnesota. Now, a bit of a controversy is that your President Trump, enacting a presidential emergency order, declared a blockade on exporting 3M from being able to ship outside of the United States their 3M masks. One of the things that turns out, though, is that that's a special pulp that's actually used in these masks. And apparently the pulp mill in Nanaimo, British Columbia, which is on Vancouver Island, is the only pulp mill that actually produces this Western red cedar pulp that these N95 masks are made of. That's what I've heard. So there was a shipment of masks that I just heard today was temporarily blocked at the border between Canada and the US, some 300,000 masks, I think it was, but they were released. So the thing is, somehow We do have to, it's a global economy, and we're very much dependent on each other for different things, and so somehow we have to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
One of the things I think this is telling us is, for the past since the mid 80s, I guess, the so-called globalization was basically letting corporations send off manufacturing to the lowest bidder, the locations where the labor laws are the weakest, where worker safety regulations are the lowest. And so, surprise, surprise, so much of what we need is actually now not even manufactured in North America. In China, talking about Australia for Nicole, I really enjoy 60 Minutes Australia. They seem to have a very hard-hitting news team there. But if you are interested, 60 Minutes Australia talks about how China has commandeered manufacturers in China and just took over the plants, the factories that make these different personal protective equipment, masks and gowns and such. In addition, China, while everybody else wasn't really realizing what was happening, they were telling Chinese-based companies, like even if it was a real estate company offshore in Australia, for example, to have the employees of whatever company that might be to go around and buy masks and then repackage them, obviously, I suppose, to get past customs or border patrols. And they had over 2 billion pieces of personal protective equipment shipped from around the world to China. So, anyway, I don't want to be too hard on the Chinese, but hopefully they're going to reciprocate by getting some of that stuff back to the rest of the world now that we need it too. One more thing I'll share about Australia, and maybe Nicole will comment. In the same segment from 60 Minutes Australia, they talked about how it is from the cruise ships that Australia has gotten a lot of its sickness, because I suppose it's summertime down there and it's a great place for cruise ships to go touring around. And one cruise ship actually accounts for 12% of the cases in Australia.
Yeah.
There was, it was quite shocking. And Australia is really in a troubling situation because there's currently, according to this item, this 60 Minutes Australia, and I think it's fairly recent, there's 12 big cruise ships currently in Australian waters, and a lot of these ships have sick people, and it's a real predicament because they'll be potentially overwhelming the Australian system. So anyway, our thoughts and prayers for Australia. Thank you.
Meanwhile, Deb and
yeah.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. Well, apparently they were a bit lackadaisical when some people got off because they just kind of walked off. And then I heard something the other day about that someone's on the news, on the internet, they said that they were going to turn the cruise ships into like floating hospitals. And like,
Right.
I think that a lot of the people are still on there. They weren't allowed to disembark, but only certain people were. But yeah, it was not very well handled.
It's a very good segment. I recommend it because there's a doctor who talks about how it's been known for some time, but that these cruise ships are really a petri dish to create and spread infection. Because you've got people in pretty crowded conditions, even though it might be luxurious, people are pretty tight.
Yes.
And it's all steel and aluminum and surfaces that, a bug like this coronavirus will sit on, and everybody's going down the same hand railing, and, they're all mingling, and So yeah, I don't know what the cruise ship industry is going to do. They're going to have a really tough time recovering from this, I think, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's the end of cruise ships, I think. I used to work for Captain Cook Cruises about 25 years ago as a deckhand and a waitress. They had this cruise ship on the Hawkesbury, and I used to clean the rooms. And I was, it sort of dawned on me like, oh my God, this is a really, like you can pick up so many viruses and people get sick, and it's really going to impact the cruise industry for sure.
Yeah, Deb and I have a friend who was very excited because she was going to go to Antarctica on a cruise ship about 5 weeks ago. And I said, "Are you sure you want to get on a cruise ship right now?" She said, "Oh, no, it'll be fine." So she goes flying off to Buenos Aires and gets on this cruise ship. And after they'd gone south, they were not allowed to re-enter Eastern South America and had to go all the way around the Horn and through the Strait of Magellan and up to San Diego. And they had an extra like 2-week cruise. Fortunately, there was
Nice.
nobody sick on her ship, and so she was able to get off at San Diego and fly home. But I think she was very lucky.
Yeah. I got the stats on Australia. It has gone up slightly. It says on this app that there's 45 deaths. There's 1,080 recovered, and there's 5,895 recorded cases in the whole of Australia, according to this app that I've got. So it's a little bit more.
Well, you're lucky right now, that's for sure.
Skip, can I ask a question about your dreams?
Yes.
We've often talked about the way Jung, in some way, foresaw in his dreams the catastrophe of World War I.
Right.
Do we know of anybody in our circle who has foreseen, in a sense of foreboding, what we're going through now?
I certainly have. And Nicole can vouch for this because a few weeks when we first heard about this virus in Wuhan, the very first time I heard about it, I had, my God image whisper in my ear, this is going to kill you. And thank you, Nicole, for writing to me to say, no, it's not going to kill you, but you ought to start thing, which I did. But and so meanwhile, I did have another dream recently where I won't go into the complicated imagery, but my God image landed in a helicopter and came into a crowd in which I was a part. And he was in the form of the best man in my wedding. So he was a dear friend of mine. That's the image he was, okay? And he lands in this helicopter and walks right by me. And he wasn't interested in me. So that told me that Nicole is probably right. I'll probably survive, but
we hope so.
Yeah. So anyway, these things can change. I mean, they're moment bound. So, if you have a bad dream and then you change the context, it can come back as a good dream the next time around, right? Because things change. So Brendan, as long as you're here and talking, we're all talking about how we're facing and what we're facing in our communities. I wonder if you'd talk about yourself a little bit.
I am an essential person according to the Governor Hogan, tangentially, Skip, my job is I'm a church musician, and
Right.
that seems like the last person you'd expect to be carrying somewhere in my jacket. I have an order which I can show to a sheriff should he think, who the dickens is this driving around on a Saturday night, to say, look, religious ceremonies can be streamed online. And in my particular faith group, a major religious ceremony cannot take place without music.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the ability to go into work every Sunday, but I have to say, on a personal level, I have been getting up late every day. I've been showering twice, I think, last week, maybe 3 times. I went out to the store 3 times. Terrible, but I mean, I didn't need to. I could have ordered stuff online, but I needed to get out of the house. On a personal level, I'm not coping with this very well. I'm not being as sensible as maybe some of you are. I would say that everybody I see is taking this very seriously. Everybody I interact with is taking this very seriously. I mean, the fact that I only went out 3 times in a week, whereas I would normally go out maybe 14 times, twice a day, is
Sure.
evidence that I am taking it as seriously as I can.
Right. And Deb and I are only going out once a week, and we were supposed to go to the grocery store today at 6 a.m., but we decided not to because we decided that the grocery store would be cleaned out after the weekend, the first weekend of the month, when lots of less lucky people than us end up getting their paychecks or the money that they have for the month, and would be shopping. So I convinced Deb to put it off till tomorrow. So tomorrow at 6 a.m. I'll be up at 5 to get into the grocery store and do our business for we're going to try to do a 2-week buy this time, actually. So Thomas, I'm not sure if we can hear you, but I would love to hear you.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. So tell the global audience, if you will, because this video will be seen by at least a couple hundred people by tomorrow, particularly in places like Europe and the Middle East, because they normally see it in playback overnight. Could you just tell us where you are and what you're facing?
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. A little just outside of Birmingham, Alabama. We've got a lockdown situation here, but we have, fortunately, enough wooded areas where we can kind of get outside and get into that. That has been what is keeping me a bit sane. Is getting into nature right now a little more than I ordinarily do, and playing my guitar.
That's good.
But people are probably not following the rules in Alabama quite as strictly as they are in other states. There's a religious, I wouldn't call it a bias, but a sort of a strong religious feeling here. And I think people probably went to churches in the past couple of weeks when they shouldn't have, out of a religious, but wanting to be with their religious friends and in churches, but it's probably not wise. Those churches have been shut down.
Yeah, that's
how really not much different than anywhere else, but it doesn't seem to be quite as bad as Louisiana or Georgia
or Florida.
Yeah, Florida.
Yeah,
we're doing what we can.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thomas is an outstanding writer. I might even have his most recent book in my heap next to me. It got buried, I'm afraid. It was called "Never Trust Anybody with a Snake on a Stick" or something.
Never snicker at a snake on a stick.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I would like to say too that since this time, I've felt a great creative urge. I wake up about 4 or 5 every morning and start writing stuff and sometimes recording music. And I feel a little bit guilty about it. I mean, am I cashing in on the pandemic or whatever? But it's just the creativity that bubbles up right now. I don't know. I don't know how to. I wonder if anyone else feels that.
Yeah.
Yes, I am practicing more music. I am writing more music. I just took over as host of a group called You Are Not Alone, which is in Washington, D.C. And I'm finding this vacuum of social interaction is evoking creativity in me.
Great. So,
Oh, yeah.
So Thomas,
I'm
Skip,
glad
I'll
that
just draw
struck a
your
nerve.
attention. Dan Papa Center has their hand up.
oh, Cindy, go ahead. Wait a minute, we have to unmute you.
That was a while back, but yeah, I feel creative too when I'm not feeling tired. But not to darken the creativity thought, but when I'm sorry, can't recall the name. Somebody was talking about a friend has a nurse, and it got me to thinking. Who was that?
That was me.
Okay.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
And so that got me to thinking that, I'm at home and I, kind of like, I guess, a fireman who runs towards a fire. I feel really guilty that I'm homesick. And this alternating symptoms that I seem to be feeling on the days when some symptoms are less, I feel like, okay, I can go back to work. And so
Will they allow you back to work before you stop testing positive?
no,
Uh-huh.
no.
I thought not.
No.
Thomas, since you have your guitar in your hand, are you interested in playing a song for us? I get. How? I don't know if he heard me. Thomas,
No. Did he hear you?
Thomas, I invited you to play a song for us to cheer us all up if you want to. No, I guess you didn't hear me. Okay, we did. I guess we did hear from Nicholas. Brendan, can you play us something? Do you have?
I can definitely play you something, but it's not something that I'm just going to play what comes to my mind.
Okay, that would be well received, I assure you.
Oh, we have Thomas. He's playing his 12-string.
Oh.
Right.
This is a beautiful evening with music.
Thomas said he lost his connection, so.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, Brendan, you're.
Well, this is.
Oh, he's back. Thomas is.
Oh, good.
All right.
Okay, Thomas, play away.
Listening. I'm listening.
Okay. Can you play us a song?
Oh, sure. I could try.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. Everything you do, every musician tries. That's all we can do.
I'm glad to hear that other people are feeling creative at this particularly nefarious time. I kind of felt guilty about it. I'm glad to hear other people say that they've been doing some good work too. Thanks a lot, guys. I mean, appreciate that. That's about it right now.
Okay.
I'm a little self-conscious. I'm sorry. Some other time.
Okay,
Maybe
practice up. Maybe next week. Brendan, you're
I'm practicing.
I want to ask a question from two viewers, Thomas and somebody else. I think it was the person who, luckily for her, lives in the Gampopa Center. Because I wish I could live in a Buddhist monastery, but both the person, I imagine she's a monk, the one who lives in the Gampopa Center, and Thomas both mentioned feeling guilty. And it's interesting to me that guilt is a emotion commonly felt right now.
Very good point.
Well, the Gampopa Center, there's actually Cindy, and Cindy is a mental health nurse at Johns Hopkins University Hospital, and she's a practicing Buddhist, but not a monk as far as I know. And
I should probably say that in the past week or probably the past 2 months or so, I'm a yogi. I try to practice yoga every day, and I've been able to go outside and practice outdoors since the quarantine, and meditate in the woods. It's done me a lot of good. It's helped my. That's another thing I think has probably sparked that creativity. I may be a Buddhist. I'm not sure. I may be a Hindu. I'm not sure. Yeah.
There are huge similarities, of course, and Cindy and I attend a weekly meditation group here in Annapolis, which we have been forced to go online. It usually is at a friend's psychology office, but I've been going for about 4 years, but others, I don't know how long Cindy's been going, but others have been doing that meditation group for about a decade now. Cindy's been there 6 years. And so today I received permission to publish our meetings. So I'll start to do that probably from tomorrow or Wednesday.
That's interesting.
I did record our meeting this morning, and so I'm going to edit out the two ends where we were talking about things like this, and just have our actual practice on the video. And meanwhile, we did have a very, very powerful meeting last Saturday night, which included people from 5 countries and, I'm sorry, 8 countries and 9 states. And there was a lot of good advice in there. And I will be posting that before I go to bed tonight. I just completed editing the video.
Skip?
Yes, go ahead, Joss.
Hi, folks. If you don't know me, I'm Joss. I'm from Hawaii, and just wanted to put in my 2 cents worth, since the question is that's been, I guess, somewhat pervasive in a lot of us, feeling guilty for social isolation and staying at home. I'm just wondering, and I'm throwing this out, if this is similar to survival guilt. you know, we're here and we're having this conversation on the internet, and that shows a certain level of affluence in a certain way. There's a lot of people who are very, very poor and destitute, and this COVID-19 is really putting them in a different perspective than ours. And our perspective right now, since we're cooped up in the luxury of shelter, food, and socialization through internet, we may be feeling, quote, guilty that we have such abundance and others do not.
So I do not feel guilty for being in a chair by myself in a room.
But anyway, that's why I'm just throwing it out. Everybody has different feelings right now going on. And that's why I feel that this is a opportunity for, like Cindy and Nancy would, and also Nicole would say, a time for deep reflection. I'm certainly very grateful for the things that I do have, the little things that I do have. And I wish, you know, in my heart that we could be out there and helping every single person right now who is in deep trouble and deep pain and suffering.
Well, I think.
Does anybody?
Go ahead, Brendan.
Does anybody know what the causes of guilt are? I really liked what you said, Joss, and it made me think about, does guilt come from a sense of not deserving everything you have, or does it come from a sense of empathy for others, or what is the source? Does anybody know what is the source of the feeling called guilt?
Well, one thing I'd like to say in response to both of you is that my sense of guilt is kind of foundational on my sense, a slight bit of embarrassment. I don't think all guilt is embarrassment. I don't think all guilt is, let me turn my, I think I'm echoing. As a nurse, I feel like I should be there. I feel like I want to be there. I want to be there, but I should be there. I'm trained to be there, but I can't. And my desire to be there to help people is far, far, far greater. I mean, I put myself in harm's way all the time, but this time now, I have a hard time reconciling with the fact that I would be putting other people in harm's way if I was there. I can't fathom that. That's not how I was trained. That's not how I've been a nurse since 1981. I've almost 39, almost 40 years. And everything I've ever done has always been to help people, help others. And so I feel like I'm sitting on my hands. I feel like I should, you know, get up and go. And I can't. And for me, there's a slight bit of embarrassment. It's like, oh, well, you're a nurse. You should be out there. And you know, what kind of nurse are you that you can't go and do your job? Part of my brain says that. And the other side is saying, you know, the intelligent, smart things that need to be said. And so that's kind of, I don't know if that's guilt. I don't know if that's embarrassment. It's a lot of emotions I haven't felt in decades.
Cindy, this is Joss again. I sense you're, you know, I sense you're a very giving, big-hearted person who's very goal-oriented. And you know, want to give, and hey, listen, I'm a psychiatrist. I do that too, and I push myself even to the limit, and I have to kind of pull myself back a few times. And again, I go back to the question, what is enough?
Yeah.
And that's a hard question sometimes, but then the bottom line is, you tune into your feelings and what are you feeling right now? And are you feeling stressed, or are you feeling, and you go through all this and you go through your little self-analysis. And right now, you know, your main battle is to recover. So give yourself kudos that you're breathing and you're able to talk and share. Right now, you're doing a big contribution by sharing your feelings and out there to the world. So my God, thank you. Thank you. So pat yourself on the back. You know, you're doing more than enough right now.
Right. And I think it was you, Joss, that said that we have to do what is nearest to us and what we can do, what we can reach. I mean, sure, we'd all like to cure everybody at Johns Hopkins Hospital, but most of us aren't qualified to do that, and you know, couldn't do it for other reasons. So, you know, we don't have to be guilty for where we are, or who we are. We just need to make our part of the world as good as possible, so that it's not dragging on the rest of you. Yeah, right. Okay,
You know,
Brendan, you're muted, but I'll unmute you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
I was just thinking there was a fantastic opportunity Joss said to you about healing now, because it seemed to me that there was a bit of you of what you said, which was about the need to be a nurse, the need to be there. Because now's your opportunity, instead of needing to be a nurse, to figure out, do you want to be a nurse? Is this something that gives you joy, makes you the whole person you want to be? Or is it something that actually is treating a deeper symptom of needing to do something? But the thing I do want to say is this. I never shared this before in this group, but 40 years ago, 25 years ago anyway, or 22 years ago, when I was living in Italy, and my wife and I were wondering what part of America to live in, friends of ours gave us various suggestions, and I did a reading. I know how to do a reading with ley lines. I'm sure a lot of you here are familiar with ley lines. So I did a reading with a silver cross, or was it, I can't remember, silver something, a silver chain and something. And I did a ley line reading of the United States of America. And the cross, or whatever it was, the weight pendant, whatever it was, dragged my hand across the map to Annapolis. I thought, wow, that's weird. And my wife had said, no, we're not going to Annapolis. It's too small. It's not cosmopolitan enough. We need to go to a big city. So among other reasons, we chose Baltimore, and we lived there happily for 20 years. Or we lived there anyway. But I have to say that I did not realize you were meditating for 10 years. There's something very holy and spiritual about Annapolis. And I think it comes down to the fact you guys have been meditating there for at least 10 years, maybe more. Mm-hmm. It's a holy city. Yeah. It's a sacred place. And I want to thank you for that, because every time I drive there, I feel there's something profoundly spiritual.
Well, the amazing thing about Annapolis is that it's a colonial city, and and unlike colonial Williamsburg, which has been turned into a theme park, Annapolis we live in our colonial city. So, you know, the houses that were, you know, the old houses from long ago are still there, and the building called Maryland Inn, it's a hotel and restaurant, but it's right on Church Circle in Annapolis. So it's right across the street from the Episcopal Church, or the Church of England, depending on how you're talking about it. But anyway, it was built in 1690. And it's the building in which the Treaty of Paris, which ended the American Revolution, was signed. It's two miles from me right here. And and so, there's a lot of the aura of the founding fathers here. And it, actually, most people wouldn't know, but Annapolis was the first capital of the United States. That only lasted for 10 months before they moved the capital to first to Philadelphia, and then ultimately they moved it to New York in 1790, and then finally in 1801, I think they moved it to Washington. But I think it was in 1783 when the Articles of Confederation were drawn up. Annapolis was the capital, and so we have the building in which George Washington surrendered his sword so that he could be a civilian president of the United States and not a warlord. And so there's a lot, this place has a lot of very deep spiritual meaning for all of us that live here. And for me, I have my very life thanks to Annapolis, because my grandfather, one of his great works was to get my father into the Naval Academy. And my father spent all of World War II essentially in the Naval Academy. He happened to be on the first ship to sink a U-boat at the beginning of the war, actually before the beginning of the war, because it happened in 1940. But they sank a U-boat off the East Coast. But then he got into the Naval Academy in 1942, graduated in 45. And so he had the perfect ticket. And so because my grandfather made that happen, I'm here. That's another example of my personal luck. There's an interesting comment here on the chat. There's a man named Benjamin who's talking about the fact that he's presenting a bit of a conspiracy theory, which is about how this is just a big social engineering project. And he says, the fact of the matter is 7 million people died during the Great Depression. Maybe 50 to 70% of them were self-sufficient. 90% of the people today aren't. They will not be able to feed themselves. And obviously, as our societies have changed, we've become dependent on the way they work. And our industries years ago started to send our manufacturing offshore. And I remember thinking 30 years ago that the last shoe plant went to China. And the point of that was that we could no longer buy combat boots to put on the army because the manufacturing was in China. So we would go bootless in the event of a war that involved China. And I don't think that that's changed. I became less worried about that. But as we see now, we're totally dependent for many things around the world on international supply chain. And it's no hardship for Ford and GM to be asked to build ventilators, because there's going to be millions of them needed around the world. It's not only the ones that are going to be needed for the US. So that's going to be a big business for a very long time, I think. But anyway, comments on what I've said?
I want to address something that Thomas Dennis said in the chat here. So he was talking about the ley lines, and I think it was he mentioned Asheville, North Carolina as being a chakra city. So I'd like to verify that that's true, Thomas. So since I'm from Asheville in the area, so there is a certain vibration and a certain reason that people are attracted here, and I can feel it. People that are very sensitive can feel it, and you may not feel it, but you're attracted to it. So it can be either way along. So, but these mountains here are very ancient and they're pristine, and they're some of the oldest mountains, and there are lots of the they're finding the mammals that ancient mammals that lived here, and the Indians, the native Indian culture was really through here. You can there's a field that a farmer plows, and all these arrowheads come up, and everybody comes out and picks up the arrowheads when he plows the fields. So there's all sorts of treasures, but there is, I really do believe there's certain vibration centers, and you can feel those.
Could you say what
I
a
concur.
chakra city is, Jerome? What is a chakra city?
Well, what happened to, did we lose Thomas?
Yeah,
Did
we
we
lost. Yes, we lost Thomas.
Oh, okay. Well, I assume that he was talking about the chakras being a vibrational
Oh
thing.
yeah, he definitely is, because he's very much into yoga. And,
yeah, well, if you're into the yoga and Kundalini thing, then you'll know that the different chakras have different vibrations, and so you go through these, and the heart is the center. The heart center is that vibration, and there's also higher vibrations, which is up in here. But so there's a whole. And since he was into yoga, then I just assumed that he knew what the chakras were. But it's a feeling of a certain frequency, is what I would say. And there are various different places around the country that people are attracted to.
So, Brendan, were you going to play something for us? We have to unmute.
You know what? A bit like Thomas, musicians are very self-conscious. So whenever I feel, I mean, I don't know if anybody has something to say, also feels that it's important for them to say something. But whenever I'm feeling something, I can express it by creating a sound like this. This is the one that I created before, which to my mind is like the beginning of a story. Once upon a time, if I play this, it's like saying to somebody, once upon a time. And then I can play a grandiloquent sound like this, which to my mind is very rich and like opening the windows on a sunny day over a beautiful vista. And then I will play something similar like this, which is a kind of a feminine sound to me. And I think it's so important now that we recognize one of the things about COVID is that more men are going down than women, because we need the creativity, we need the recreation. The women are what's going to save the human race.
That's really speaking to me, because before you started talking, I was watching what you were eating and thinking, oh, you're having a party, you know, this is kind of nice. And sorry to interrupt, but it reminds me of, because I lived in Avoca Beach for 20 years with my family, and we were very musical because my husband's a musician and so was my daughter. And we just had every night so much music, and people used to turn up at our house and create CDs, and I was kind of ejected from that life. And I still love music and listen to it all the time, and I don't play music, but music is just such a beautiful thing for healing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's like a foreign language, and I think you can access it. Everybody can learn this language. Everybody can be touched by this language. Like poetry, everybody can be touched by it, but you've got to give it time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. When my daughter was young, I used to sing. Instead of speaking to her, I would sing it.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had this really lovely, really lovely way of talking to each other, where in the mornings at breakfast, we would just sing our conversation instead of speak it. Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking while this was on, she's in Canberra. I mean, I don't know whether I might see if she wants to take part in it, because
Sure.
she's, I'll see. But yeah, that would be interesting, seeing as we haven't spoken for quite some years. But yeah.
Well, it'll be online by tomorrow, so you'll be able to do it.
Okay.
And so James Coleman says, the Holy Spirit can be seen as the female aspect of God. Yeah, it certainly can, but
there's been interesting, like what I heard the other day, speaking of the feminine, people have been telling me all these incredible things that are happening in nature, in the world. I don't know whether they're true, but apparently in Venice, the water is really clean now. Dolphins are coming back into places that they weren't before. I've been hearing all these really beautiful stories about how nature is regenerating, because we're stopped. We're not doing stuff. There's definitely something happening. There's this energy of renewal. And I mean, I even thought, as I walk outside, I think, well, maybe nature can just heal this virus. This thing that's going on.
Well, it certainly will. And I keep referring back to this this last page of chapter 1 from the Red Book. But one of the things that Dr. Jung says in this last page is, life will find a way, and it may not be the way that each one of us might like it from our egoistic perspective, but life does find a way. So, for example, we're having this very conversation because my grandfather married my grandmother instead of the woman that he had as his fiance, and who she herself and her 4 sisters all died on the same weekend.
Oh my God.
They've all died on the Spanish flu in one weekend. They were part of the Philadelphia contingent that died. And because that happened, obviously my grandfather couldn't marry her, so he married my grandmother, and therefore I'm here and we can have this conversation at all. So life does find a way, and I'm the living proof of it right here. I'm not saying it's a good way, but nonetheless.
There is so much energy.
Yes, well, we are all experiencing a major archetypal event here, okay, and maybe multiple archetypal events.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'll know for a decade how it really affected each of us and affected our society, but it is a major event, and we need to stick together. And this is why Tim and I created the global check-in. In addition to this session, I don't mean for this session to be hijacked by global check-in every week, but I think it's important to interact with one another. And you know, Dr. Jung will be there waiting for us when we're ready. And so, you know, I urge you to take a listen. If you weren't there on Saturday night for session 3, I urge you to take a listen to that. It's quite special. And today I made the timeline so you can find the different topics that we were discussing. I'll be uploading that onto YouTube either later tonight or early tomorrow morning. And then we'll be back online tomorrow at 11 with Tim co-hosting with me. So let's sort of wrap it up tonight, because we're already close to 10 o'clock, and I'm going to be back online in 13 hours. So I've been hustling to try to put a lot of things together, and I'm running out of gas. So
well, I think this
let's
is.
go around the room.
Okay. I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I really like this and people sharing. And I also was reading somewhere that a lot of time, almost 70 to 80% of our communications is via face-to-face and observing ourselves. And even though we can't be here in person, we can at least get that impression rather than just talking on the phone or doing a text or a chat. So this is an opportunity for us to really communicate. And I really hope that we can do this and just share what's going on with us. And, you know, sure, as I said, I'm terrified to go to the grocery store because of my allergies and stuff like that. So, but I have to go, you know, so I'll try to protect myself. But admit that you're feeling that. I think that's part of it right there. And it's okay. That's natural to feel that way.
Yeah, we all have to take that risk, but I will say that when we come home from the grocery store, my wife and I immediately put our clothes in the hamper to be washed, and we take our showers right then to make sure that anything we can get off of us, we do.
I did exactly that when I went out. I just came in, got everything put up, went to the shower, put all the clothes in the washer, and put in some bleach, and you know. So.
Right. And so that's what we're doing. At 6 o'clock in the morning, we're going to the old people's time at the grocery store. And
yeah, well, 6 a.m. though. You know,
yeah, 6 to 7 is the old people's time, supposedly.
No,
Well, I guess for one thing, it's when all the dust from the day before is settled as much as possible.
Yeah, and they sterilize the store at night. They're doing that on purpose, so it's fresh from cleaning. So hopefully it'll be better for the old people. Yeah. Older people. I don't like to say old people. I just say older.
Right. So I will be later tonight sending everyone that's here the contact points for the global check-in, which is 4 days a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and Sunday. Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, it's at 11 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time, which isn't very comfortable for Nicole, but for the rest of it, and for Joss either. But Joss did get up at 5 a.m. the other day a couple times to be with us. we want others to join us, but we're going to have to go through a bit of a security procedure. And so I'm trying to establish an email where if you want to join, I'm going to put it on the YouTube chat. It's HTTP. It's globalcheckin.me, globalcheckin.me. And unfortunately, we were having a bit of a problem with the creation of that earlier today. So I'm not sure if it's functional, but ultimately we're going to make that email or, oh, I'm sorry, it's not, it's info. The email is info@globalcheckin.me. Okay, so that's the email address that hopefully by tomorrow you'll be able to reach us if you wish to join. And we certainly want to hear from every country of the world in this global check-in. And we're building a community of people that are going to interact with us. We've added a few very valued people in the last few days, and we appreciate their contributions. Unfortunately, for this time of night, they're on the other side of the world, so it's very difficult. And but in in the morning, they can reach us from Europe and from India and other places like that. So if you want to join the conversation and tell us about your experiences with the global pandemic that we're facing, please do write to us at that email address, and we will see if we can admit you to the group. Yeah, we'll try to admit you to the group. We are having to use passwords and things now because we did have some Zoom bombs over the weekend, and so we've tightened up our security quite a bit since then. But we're open for anyone from any country, from any religious group, from any race, creed, or color, and we would love to hear your stories about what's happening in your part of the world. So hope you'll join us then.
You were doing closing remarks from others, maybe?
Yes. Nancy, do you have any closing comments here?
Well, one of the problems that I'm having is that I'm going off a medication that was prescribed last summer. And so on the days that I'm taking less of that than others, I really have quite a fall, I really have to try to get hold of myself, but it is a chemical thing in the brain. And so my body is so depressed, but my mind at least has some tools to use to get through it. But my shadow is a lot more present on those days, which is embarrassing to me, but good for me to have to admit to that.
Right.
And I just love these group meetings. I come as often as I possibly can. It gives me a sense of community, which I miss a great deal.
Cindy, do you have any?
I just want to say thank you for the invitation, Skip, and I absolutely look forward to the next session and to be able, I'm going to go back and watch the other or listen to the other previous meetings that you've had. I think you said you're going to be having number 4 this week.
Well, we've had number 4. Only 1 and 2 are up right this minute, but I'm going to upload probably tonight number 3. And that was quite a moving one. And also the one on Sunday that Nicole was able to join us with. Is that the one? No.
Yeah, that's 4, number 4.
I think Nicole joined us on her Sunday. So
Yeah,
that was
that's
number
4.
3.
Oh,
Okay.
3.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I am absolutely going to watch them, and I may just get in contact with you on private message or text to make sure that I get the right type of access to that, so I know where to go. But I did want to make one comment. I do work for a very large organization, and anything that I may have shared here, just for posterity and purposes of anybody who listens, is not representation or representative of the institution I work for. These are all my own personal beliefs and opinions and perspectives.
Yeah.
Good.
Fair enough. Some of us are still employed and have to have those disclaimers.
Yeah.
And we have very few mental health professionals in this group. We have Joss as a psychiatrist and Cindy is a psychiatric nurse, but other than that, we are just people who've had a lot of life experience and know a thing or two. Very painfully in many cases. So Nicole, how are you doing? Are you?
Yeah, thank you, Skip. It's like opening up a doorway to a whole new realm. I'm really enjoying it because I'm very isolated.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for all the little reminders and that, because one of the things that happens when I get stressed is I get confused and I lose things, and I'm a bit disorganized, but I'm getting better. And yeah, it's just lovely. Like when I look at Nancy's picture, I can just imagine like her home looks really beautiful, and the beautiful embroidered on the lounge. It's just it's just so wonderful to connect with people that I can talk to freely, and I feel really comfortable. And yeah, it's really fantastic. And sense of connection and what are we going into? I don't know what this is. It's so uncertain and unknown. So it's just really nice to be with ourselves, but sharing our experiences. And I'm okay, but when I get anxious, I can't breathe. So I'm sort of every couple of days I notice, I'm doing that thing again where I'm not,
Right.
I'm just so it is keeping me going. And yeah, I'm just really grateful and really curious about everybody, and it's just lovely to listen and so thank you. Yeah.
We have a lovely remark from Khushbu Kataria, who is on with us sometimes. It's very early in India.
Yes.
And she's going to, I hope, join us tomorrow. But anyway, she says, sending some love and prayers to all of you beautiful people. With
that's nice.
So
I like that.
we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, Khushbu, I hope. So Joss, go ahead. We have to unmute you.
It's like the world is being hit with the reboot button. Everything is in a standstill. Business as usual has stopped, and the busyness of life has stopped. And now we're pretty much forced by the grace of God to stay still. And in this stillness, I think we are incubating into a level of creativity like we've never seen before. And it's a time, for healing. And part of the healing is to realize that human connection is really, really important. And that's what we're doing right now, folks. We really are connecting like we've never done before. Yep. And like we talked about, Cindy, you're going through this difficult time in your life with the COVID-19, and you've been out there in the fields helping people as a psych nurse, and now you're forced to be the patient. And it's a contrast. You're now flipped. You're on the other side of the coin, so to speak. But all this contrast is really, like I mentioned, bringing out the best of human kindness and compassion. And it's making us look at what we really, really value. There's an important saying, and for all those who are very spiritual, I think this will resonate in your heart. Love is to value. And so, like the Buddhist saying, how does one achieve the greatest value in the short span of a lifetime? Well, it all depends on what we value. So if love and time is what we value, then let's do it. I just want to end with this prayer. And for all those who are, of course, we all are spiritually inclined, it's the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. Again, we think of contrast. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
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 Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So Brendan, did you want to finish up?
Well, thank you. I just want to thank you, Skip, for your stewardship of, or your pastorship of this flock. It's a great thing you do. I love it. I've loved it since the first meeting I came to a year or two ago at Sammy's, and it's just very nurturing. There was a part of my life that was not sure, and you have made it sure. And the sureness that you have given it is the questioning that Jung says. I don't know if Jung says this, but anyway, it goes. The questioning that it's okay to have questions. It's okay to have questions. The other thing I think is lovely with Nicole and Joss and people from all over the world. When I was a child or a young man, I used to say, well, those Americans or those Australians, no, they're not, the categories don't exist. We're humans. Right. We're humans and we love. We're all trying to love and we're humans. So thank you, Skip.
Yep.
That's what I want to say.
Thank you. My pleasure. Miles, your turn.
Thank you, Skip. And thank you, Josh, for the prayer of Saint Assisi. And I'm thinking of that prayer going out to people who are in ICU, intensive care units. And today that now includes the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson. So the virus is very democratic, I guess we would say. Now, on a positive note, I enjoyed hearing the Queen Elizabeth II, give a historic speech on Sunday. She's also the Queen of Canada, where I live. And she's been on the job for 68 years. But even before that, if you have a chance to look her up on her own YouTube channel or one of the news items that carried it, there's a scene where she and her sister are reading an encouragement to the children of England in 1940, I think it was.
Yes, it
during
was.
the war, when the children had to be sent out to the countryside for their protection. And so words of encouragement were provided by her and her sister. And that reminds me of the children's helpline for any children who are suffering any anxiety or concerns. Many places have children helplines and other crisis lines available. So I think of the Queen as an amazing leader, and the people she's met, when you think about it, your President Eisenhower, your President Kennedy, Winston Churchill, and all, of course, the leaders of the world today. She has spoken with all of them, and I suppose for many people they may think, well, she's a representative of empire, but she did, she's like all of us. She didn't ask to be born to be queen. It is just her fate that, like we all have our fate. I came into the world as Miles, and we have to make the best of it. And she's done a terrific job. So anybody who needs encouragement, you might want to look that video up.
Yeah, it was a great talk yesterday, no doubt. There is one thing that I wanted to share earlier, but I didn't get to it. And so I probably will put it on early next week. But I do want to share it with you now because all of us are facing the possible end of life of many people that we love. And I think it's very important for us to know. My wife is a volunteer sitting with the dying at Hospice of the Chesapeake. And so she pulled this together, and apparently it comes from a Hawaiian spiritual practice, but it's something that we all need to think about and probably practice it in our daily life, because when our loved ones are taken from us with this COVID virus, they might go very fast. I mean, we don't know, for example, about Prime Minister Johnson in the UK. I mean, he went into the hospital yesterday and then suddenly he's in the ICU. We can pray that he comes out, but he could just be gone too. So we need to remember that, if we drop our loved one off at the hospital, we may not get to say goodbye to them. And so I want to make everybody that watches this video aware of these 4 things that you should be doing in your daily life with your family in any case. But these are the 4 things to say before a loved one dies. And I'm just going to share the list with you right now. This is very important in terms of having closure both for yourself and the dying loved one. And so the things to say are, I love you. Thank you for all the things you have done for me in your life. Number 3 is, I forgive you for any hurts from the past. And finally, can you forgive me for any hurts that I may have originated. And I think, in the case of parents, we all have done things that we regret with our family, especially during our teenage years. And so I hope that everyone will keep those things in mind, but try to work those things into your life on a daily basis. And one other bit of encouragement here. This is from Dr. Jung, and I'm reading from The Christian Archetype, the Jungian commentary on the life of Christ. And Jung liked very much to quote from a poem called Patmos, Patmos, that is by Friedrich Hölderlin. And the two lines that are most important are, "Where danger is, grows also the rescuing power." And so the point is that when we do face danger, something will come to our aid very often, and we have to be sensible to that. And Edinger goes on to say, as Jung puts it, the highest and most decisive experience of all is to be alone with one's own self, or whatever else one chooses to call the objectivity of the psyche. The patient must be alone if he is to find out what it is that supports him when he can no longer support himself. Only this experience can give him an indestructible foundation. And so let's see. And Benjamin says, what I'm talking about is you're crying over spilled milk. This isn't even the beginning of the death. Your feminized emotional worldview is the root cause of this. And so that is the opinion of a logos-centered man, apparently, who needs to go back and evaluate his own psyche and understand, because I do agree with him that there's going to be a lot more death. And, within a couple of months here, everybody is going to know someone who's died that's in their immediate family, maybe not in their family, but in their immediate circle, people that they personally know. And the statistics suggest that that's going to be more than 1.5 million people dying in the next couple of months in the United States. And we're only at 10,000 right now. So it's going to get pretty ugly. And, basically the whole world is going into mourning in the next few months. So, Benjamin, I don't think that you're going to find that your logos orientation is going to support you in your hour of need. So you might want to start looking at other alternatives, but that's just my opinion. So with that, I'm going to move on, and thank you all. I'll be sending you the information about the new logins for the global coronavirus check-in, because that we've had to put passwords on all of those, and so they may be different from what you have. So I'll be sending them out newly sometime shortly. So thank you all for being here tonight.
Goodbye.
Peace.
Thank you.
Peace.
Wow.
Aloha.
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 Aloha.